with every third Friday Family History Show, Ms. Holly-T-Hansen, the Gen teacher and president of Family-History-Expos.com, is here to share tips on family history research and share stories. You never know with her. There's always some crazy, interesting, and really interesting story that she has to share with us that comes from what happens when you start digging into your family history. Today we're digging into Arizona family history research, and it's part of her Roots Travel series on our site, nationalparktraveling.com, where she's a featured expert, and also in Parks and Travel magazine. And this, she actually has an article coming out in the April through June issue of Parks and Travel magazine. Holly is also bringing a special guest on today's show, Mr. James Tanner. He is a member of the Family-History-Expos.com support staff, an expo assistant, a research expert, and along with having 37 years experience as a trial attorney here in Arizona, he also has over 30 years experience in genealogical research, and is the author of The Guide to Family Search Online, and his blog Genealogy-Star is one of the top genealogy blogs in America. And so we're very excited to have them both here. Welcome, Holly. How are you doing? It's good to have you back.
Hey, I'm happy. I am, and I'm so glad to be back with you guys. It's fun.
Super. I know. Every time you come on, you're like, I'm happy. I love this. It's always on a Friday. We should be happy. It's exciting. We have a long weekend ahead, and very glad to have you back on the show, Holly. And also, welcome, James. Welcome to the show. How are you?
We're just fine. I'm doing great up here. I happen to be in Provo, Utah, and I'm looking at a beautiful snow-covered mountain in sunshine.
Wow.
So
wow.
I think that's nice to be.
Was that what it's like for you too, Holly, up in Utah?
Yeah, lots of snow and blue skies. Beautiful day.
Well, we have our river washes are running today. We've got a lot of rain, and the desert got a good soaking last night,
yeah,
and we're very happy about that. I think that's a good thing, and we're looking forward to a little sunshine too, because we like our sunshine out here in Arizona, and if it even gets a little bit nippy cold, we bundle up and don't know what to do about that. And Holly, you saw that with Nancy and Yuma when we saw you. You're running around in a T-shirt, and I'm like, I'm going back to bed. It's too cold. And it wasn't even cold. James, I wanted to go to you. So you lived in Arizona for many years, and apparently Holly says that you've driven on just about every dirt road, back road here in the state.
That's about it. I've been all over the state, from east to west, north to south. Been on, I think we've been to every, as far as I could think of, I think there's only maybe one national monument that I haven't seen, and all the rest of them I've visited every national park and monument, hiked and camped and driven all over the state.
Well, you know we really like you for that. You
yeah,
know,
that's
important because, well, isn't it amazing? A lot of times when you talk to someone who hasn't been to Arizona, you get that, you know, the image is that we're like a big sand dune with Gumby cactus, like, you know, we've got the saguaro cactus, and that's what the state looks like. But in your travels, you've experienced that we're really quite a fascinating state. I mean, we have waterfalls, we have forests. I mean, it really is quite diverse.
Absolutely. I think this desert view is a little bit restricted. There is a lot of desert, that's sure, but it's all very different desert. From north to south, we have quite a big change because of altitude and rainfall and all sorts of different things. And we've got a huge swath of timber, the largest ponderosa pine forest in the world, and we've got a lot of other things that are kind of unusual when people think of Arizona.
Yeah, and we're going to go through that ponderosa pine forest again. It's up by Flagstaff and the Kaibab area. So beautiful. James, you're a trial attorney when you were here in Arizona. So like, don't cross-examine me. I'm not going to be good at it. My answer is I'll get in trouble. No, but when you look at what you did in the legal field, did that help you in regards to genealogy, in regards to reading between the lines and just that research part of all the fine details and understanding them?
Oh, absolutely. One of the challenges that people find in doing genealogy is that a lot of the records that are extremely valuable, such as probate records that are generated when people die and their states are probated, and also court cases and other things that involve people, are very valuable for finding the families and determining who is related to who and all of that sort of thing. And they find the language a little bit difficult, but interestingly, the language of probate hasn't changed for about 400 or 500 years, and you can go back that far, and it's pretty much the same as the stuff we were used to.
Oh, wow. That's interesting. What about going to places like the Yuma Territorial Prison? I mean, is that the place to go to start researching family history, depending on who was in your family?
Well, actually, some of my relatives may have been in the Yuma Territorial Prison.
Wow.
I'm not sure exactly when they would have stayed there, but it was accommodating for a number of people in Arizona. But this is there are the main area for finding genealogical information about Arizona. I think there's something that needs to be said, is that the population of Arizona in 1900 was very small. Very, very, very limited number of people that live here. And so the number of people who are truly native to Arizona is also extremely small. Right now, estimates are somewhere only about a third of the people in the state are natives, meaning they were born here, but that doesn't mean their parents were even born there. And so it's a small percentage. Most everyone else has moved in from someplace else, primarily Texas and California, and up to a lot of retired people from up in the northern parts of the country, Wisconsin and Michigan and other places. And
so it might be that you'll find like a temporary thing, like they were here for a little bit, or you won't find this wouldn't be the end of your research kind of thing when you're researching.
Yeah, if you're looking for original Arizona people, there's a lot of information, and primarily, I would think one of the major beginning sources is the Arizona State Library, and also they have the Arizona State Archives. They're both downtown Phoenix, located in downtown Phoenix, and they have a rather extensive online presence in both. And those records on those websites include a huge biographical survey of most of the original pioneers and original settlers in Arizona. So they're well known.
We included the addresses and the links, the web links, in the article, so people can find those online really easy.
Yeah, everyone, it's up on nationalparktraveling.com. If you go in and just type in Arizona Family History, you'll get Holly's article. And on that article, you gave like the Arizona Historical Society, the David Rumsey map collection. So maps play a role in learning family history too.
Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. Wow. Yeah. There's you mentioned in the introduction that there's a number of trails, and yes, there are some very significant trails in Arizona. The original settlers came across the plains and into Arizona on what's called the Santa Fe Trail. Came down through and into Santa Fe, New Mexico. Arizona history is rather, in terms of being history, is kind of a two-part history. The first history is the history of Mexico, because all of Arizona was in Mexico and was part of Mexico, and until the 1848, when we had the so-called Mexican War, and that part of Mexico was claimed by the United States. And then again in 1860s, when the United States purchased additional property from Mexico called the Gadsden Purchase. But we still have a significant number of people, even some that I know, well, a lot of them that I know personally, that are original settlers. Their families go back to the 1700s when they came up from Mexico. So they've been there a lot longer than the United States has, and they're a very visible population in Arizona, in some parts of the state.
I've heard that.
So
the Presidio in Tubac, Arizona. The Tubac Presidio is one of the most important places in Arizona history to go for learning any of our history here. That's like a key place that people should go is to Tubac, and then between Tubac and Yuma, kind of like the beginning of almost statehood, right? The importance.
Right. Well, Tucson was the only city, if you want to consider it as a city, a very small town as a city in Arizona, until around 1875, 1876, when the population of the people started to come into the state. Probably the most important trail that we have in Arizona is called the Beale. It's Beale, Beale Wagon Road. I don't know if you've heard of that.
I've heard of Beale Street.
Edward. Yeah, they name streets after him. Edward Fitzgerald Beale was an Army officer who was tasked with establishing a wagon road across the United States from Fort Smith, Arkansas, to the California coast.
Oh, wow.
And the interesting part of that survey, which was done in 1857, was the fact that they employed camels as part of their. They actually purchased camels that came in from the Middle East and used those camels with the soldiers to carry their supplies across the United States. And
they're still here.
Well, they were when I was a teenager. They were actually still in Arizona. But
you know what? They were on the loose. Just the other night,
yeah, they were.
In Green Valley, Arizona, somebody has them on a ranch, and they escaped, and they were running through
cool.
a home district. You know, it's like you go outside to take a walk in your neighborhood, and here comes two camels running down the street. Like, this just happened. I'm serious.
Oh, okay. Well, they're still around then. They're when they got through with the trail, they blazed the trail across Arizona, and that's what's basically now the railroad and the freeway up through Flagstaff and across Arizona. It was almost, the freeway follows the wagon trail almost within a few miles all the way across the state.
Oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know that.
So Beale did the road, and that's the main route that everybody came into Arizona for years and years. The other route was the southern route, which is called the Mormon Battalion Trail. And the Mormon Battalion Trail was established by, let's see, let me get the exact.
Yeah, because that's pretty intense, that trail. That goes back to your family history, Holly.
They went from July 1846 to July 1847. It was during the war, the Mexican War, and they were recruited in Council Bluffs, Iowa, and walked all the way across the United States to San Diego. Well, it was Mexico back then, but they walked 2,000 miles. It's the longest infantry march in American history. And they established the trail. They were following what was called the Cook Trail, the Cook and Fremont Trail, and that was the Southern
Fremont
Route
again.
Trail.
Now Fremont,
he keeps cropping up.
He keeps cropping up in everywhere we go. Here he comes, and they actually have. He has a state park in California, Fremont Peak State Park up in San Benito County, in Central California, and they have Fremont Peak Day coming up, everybody, where they celebrate him, and the park and clean the park and do all kinds of good things. But he comes up in Las Vegas history too, Fremont.
Yeah, he comes in Utah too. We've got a couple of Fremont. We got a Fremont River and the Fremont Pass and a whole bunch of things here in Utah also. So he was all over the place.
Wow,
but once they
that's
established, once the Mormon Battalion established that route, the southern route, then with a few modifications, that was used by the Butterfield Overland Stage. So a lot of the in 1847, when the gold strike started in California, that was a favorite route because it didn't go through any snow and mountains and all that kind of stuff. So
with the Butterfield, we just did a feature on this, going back to John Butterfield's connections back to England, but also did a trail map so people could go. They're working on it becoming a National Historic Trail, and I really hope it does because there's so much history in this,
too.
and it's such a. I just think even how they did these celerity wagons, and could you imagine like going across a desert on a wooden bench, and just no, doesn't sound like fun. But I know that I did a thing showing people you can go to Fort Bowie, Picacho Peak, and to Yuma and to Borrego. When I was putting that together, and I was wondering about that in regards to family history. Are there documents from people taking these kinds of stagecoach trips? Because not many did, because a lot of times it was for mail, but they did take a few passengers. Can that help you in family history, or is that kind of resource available?
Absolutely. Yeah, there are a lot of those resources. I've worked through quite a few of those.
Cool.
The interesting thing, if we switch back up to the north part, is that my ancestors came to Arizona in 1877 on that Beale wagon road. So they came down. They started in a place called Beaver, Utah. My great grandfather and his wife got married in St. George, Utah. And then immediately, within a couple of weeks, began a trail down to settle along what's called the Little Colorado River, and that's right on the Beale Trail.
Wow!
So they were very active in 1877. They were just a year after the first Mormon settlers came down from Utah to settle what's called the Little Colorado River Valley.
That's really interesting too, because when you look at Beale Street in Memphis, I know it's famous for jazz and music and blues. Do you think Beale Street's named after him up there? If he went from Arkansas?
No, not at all.
Okay,
no.
So that's a different Beale. I like to connect everyone's names. See, this is what happens though, right? In family history, you start thinking everyone's related.
Well, there is a Beale Street in Kingman.
That's where I know it. Right Kingman, Arizona. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. And that's part of Route 66, isn't it? Beale Street on Route 66.
Yeah, and Route 66 was another famous part of the Beale Wagon Road when it got established. They built 66 across right along the surveyed road that Beale had made.
Wow.
So
I was going to say, Holly had mentioned in her article the honeymoon trail. Holly, I know Yuma was the wedding capital before Vegas thought of it. So was this like after everyone left Yuma, they made a honeymoon trail and got in nice little cars and put like little tin cans and drove that are attached to the car at the back, just married signs, and then everybody follows that same road. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
James
might know about the honeymoon trail. I'm just quoting that off of the Arizona wiki page. And James Monitor, he's over the wiki page, so he probably wrote that.
I did. But the ancestors, my ancestors were very much involved with it. Once the Mormons came down and established settlements in Arizona, all over Arizona, from northern Arizona up on what's now on the Navajo Reservation, all the way down to places like down in Safford and St. David, and all of those towns were established by the Mormons. St. John's and Show Low and across the different places across the ones that some of the towns on the freeway, on the northern freeway up there are like Flagstaff and Holbrook and Winslow are railroad towns primarily, but the rest of them were all established by the early Mormon settlers. my ancestors would go to St. George, because that's where the closest LDS temple was, the temple for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And so they would travel from these towns all throughout Arizona to St. George to get married. And so that's called the honeymoon trail, because that was how they spent their honeymoon, was traveling across Arizona and camping out in the desert, going into St. George. The trip took anywhere from 3 to 4 weeks one way. And so they had a nice time to get to know each other.
Yeah, really.
As they traveled.
Hey, honey, there's a scorpion on my foot. It's like, this is a snake over there. I had to bring in the snakes just for Holly. And Steve Reichert, our Hollywood historian, he loves the snake stories here. But so have you been to Pipe Spring National Monument in Fredonia?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Fredonia and Pipe Springs.
That's
if you want to do if you ever want to do a really interesting road, just west of Pipe Springs, right in that area, there's a road that goes south from that highway to the northern rim of the Grand Canyon. It's called a place called Toroweep, and Toroweep is the only place on the rim where you can stand and look straight down the cliff 3,000 feet to the river.
Wow. Scary.
No, everybody, Nancy can do that. I feel like if I do anything like that, I'm going in. It's going to happen.
And there's no railing, and there's nothing there, no railing at all, just rock.
No.
But there is a notice on that, by the way, if anybody thinks about it. There's a sign as you go into the road that says, from the National Forest Service, that says 80% of the people who drive this road end up with a flat tire.
Oh, that's nice.
Well, thank you.
That's real nice.
It's kind of
yeah.
It's kind of not the place. It's kind of not the place to go unless you're prepared to go there.
Yeah. Well,
and we did drive in. We've driven in, and I have some lovely pictures of the river, of the canyon. But we did get a flat tire, and we did have to replace it in.
James, tell them where all your pictures are, where they can find them, because you've got them online. People can actually go look at. He's got some fabulous photography.
Yeah, I'm also a professional photographer, by the way.
Oh, right on. Awesome.
And
it all comes together.
My pictures are primarily on a website called Walking Arizona. And it's a blog spot, so it's walkingarizona.blogspot.com. But if you just put in Walking Arizona, you'll get it. It's all one word.
Oh, so you like to walk like we do. We even have a Facebook group for walking where avid get people out and walk and see things. You know, I wanted to ask each of you, if you do this, when you are driving and you see a historical marker, do you suddenly pull over to see what it was and start to wonder whose name and what, it's become our new thing. Historic marker, pull over. Do you do that, Holly?
I do. My husband, he now does it for me. When we first got married, it drove him crazy. He just, he's a destination-driven person. He wanted to, we start here and he wanted to get there, and I'd always make him stop at these places, and he hated it. But now he likes it. It took a few years, but he's come around. Oh yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting.
Do you do that, James? Do you pull over?
Well, we do a lot. We have. I think the reason why is now I know what all the historic markers say, so I don't have to stop anymore.
Oh. Yeah,
I mean,
to me,
literally, I've driven everywhere. I know all the stories of all these people up and down.
Well, I wanted to go back to the camels on that, because one of the best historical markers to me is in Quartzsite area.
Quartzsite,
and there's a
High Jolly.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
High Jolly.
That's
that pyramid one.
He was the camel driver who was hired by Beale to assist with the camels. And when they let them all go, he took some of them, and that's where they escaped from, was from the Quartzsite area. And that's his,
I did go
his
see that
statue
monument after I visited with you guys in Yuma. I went back and found it and looked at it.
Oh, you did?
It was cool.
Oh, cool.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was one of the coolest stories, and that's how we learned about camels. We were based out in San Diego and up also in Joshua Tree area for a while, and we used to cover that region quite a bit. And I remember once, we were on our way to Yuma or back. When we lived in Julian, excuse me. And we were driving through Glamis area in the desert by the Imperial Sand Dunes, and we saw a dude with, flowy white clothes and a camel in the sand in the desert, in the dunes, walking.
Wow.
And the sand was going, I thought we were in the Middle East. Nancy and I stopped. I mean, we could not believe what we saw, but it was out there. I mean, and now we know camels, they're here, man, and they are, they actually come from America years and years ago. Well, thousands of years ago.
When we have a friend who looks at the fossils and such of wild horses and all that, and camels apparently are thought of like the wild horses in that they were reintroduced or introduced to the States, but their bones showed that they were here pretty early on. So it depends on who discovers what next as to did they really originate in North America or they just got here really early.
It's interesting.
Yeah, because, if right now the debate is about the wild horses, but the camels are up there too as far as having fossils that show they were here like early. And so, and I don't think people thought they were brought in by the Spaniards, but they were here earlier.
Who knew we were going to talk about camels on a family history show? You never know. I know. So I always say it always gets interesting here. James, I've got to ask you this: do you go to graveyards like Holly does?
Oh yeah. I was just pulling one up here, and that I thought you might be interested in. There's one of the old graveyards is right downtown in Phoenix. It's right up the street from the state capitol, and one of the people that's buried there is pretty famous. His name is Jacob Waltz, and he is the person that they'd call the Lost Dutchman and the Superstition Mountains. And so he was a real person. He was born about 1808 and died in 1891, actually died in Phoenix, and his life is pretty well documented. I did some genealogical research on him, on trying to figure out where he came from, and he was actually, the pretty good records that show he came from Germany. He was a miner, worked his way across the country, and the whole Superstition Mountain thing with people going out and looking for the Lost Dutchman mine comes from a story he told when he was almost on his deathbed, when he told some of his friends who were caring for him that he had found this mine. And so everybody's been out looking for it ever since. So
wow,
it's
how fascinating.
an interesting kind of part of Arizona's whole, especially if you live in Apache Junction or any place out in East Phoenix. It's way out in the valley.
If he had a sense of humor. And just knew they'd all go looking for it, even if it wasn't real.
Well,
that's funny.
I can tell you, I could debunk the whole thing because I've done a lot of research. I think I've read everything there is on the subject, but I won't.
Oh, well then what about
I'll just let
Peg
everybody.
Leg Smith? There's Peg Leg Smith over in Anza Borrego Desert, and they have April Fool's Day.
Yeah.
They have a Peg Leg Smith gathering.
And everybody lies.
And everybody sits and tells who's got the best lie. And, how believable are you? And this goes back into the old mining days and, out in that area too. It's fascinating when you start looking at some of these, legends. When we were in Wilcox, Arizona, we found out about the Earps, the brothers, and how, he got shot in, I think he was a drunk or something, because we went and found the old graveyard out there, and that's where we saw the snake holly. And that's his grave. It's got like guns and bottles on it and whatever, but apparently they would just walk over his dead body, or somebody shot him and they just left him lying there, and people just walked over him and stuff, like when he got shot. They didn't like him in town, Wyatt Earp's brother. But the whole Earp brothers, that whole thing, I think there's holes in the story don't you? Just some holes in
well,
there that I don't know.
Yeah, there's that's from the place where you go to get that information is Coast Tombstone, and they have a fabulous museum there, and it's a great place to visit. A lot of stories, a lot of history, especially John Slaughter and the ranch down in there in down southeastern Arizona. Then up the hill from Tombstone is Bisbee, and Bisbee also has a great history, and there's lots of things. One of my friends was asking about his ancestor a couple of generations back who he had traced to Arizona and then had disappeared, and he said, I think he lived in Bisbee, which he probably worked at the mine. I said, well, why don't you just call the courthouse and ask him? And he said, what? I said, yeah, it's a small town. Just call him up and ask him. And he said, okay. So he called the courthouse and asked what he wanted. And the clerk in the court said, sure. Let me give you a number of the head of the Bisbee Historical Society. And so he called him, and he said, absolutely. I'll do some research and get back with you. A couple of days later, he got an email that said, how would you like the information, in an email, or do you want me to send it to you? And when he got it, it was the whole history. He had he worked at the mine. It had his pay records. It had his union records. It had everything about him, everything you wanted to know.
Wow, that's amazing.
And so, it's just interesting that one of the most valuable ways to get information across the United States is just call the people where they live there and ask them
and
about
then go
the family.
visit. I like
and
to
then
visit
go visit
places.
Because then it's good.
Then it's that personal connection. You know, when we think about, we're talking about the honeymoon trail and, certain trails. I'm obsessed by the Juan Bautista de Anza National Historic Trail. There's just a thing about how they, it's just like the Mormon Battalion, how they went on foot all, so far, and managed to do it pretty safely too. And that, when I talk about the Juan Bautista, when they went the first time around, and I'm thinking, like, when you start digging in and you go to those places, you have your imagination, but then when you go to the places where they actually were, and you know that this is where they camped overnight, and this happened here and that happened there, it just really puts you into understanding the past so much better by going there. You get to understand the feeling.
And another thing that was really important, my great grandmother and my great great grandfather were professional photographers in eastern Arizona back in the late 1800s and early 1900s.
Nice.
And I actually knew my great grandmother personally. She lived until I was actually married, and she was 97 years old. And they took thousands of photographs, and those photographs, through kind of a long story, ended up I ended up with all of them. Actually turned out to be about 4,600 photographs.
Wow.
And I digitized that entire record, and then I donated all of the original glass negatives and negatives to the University of Arizona's collection right there in Tucson, where you guys are.
Oh, wow.
And so that collection is it's online.
Oh.
The catalog is online. Her name was Margaret Godfrey Jarvis Overson. So it's the Overson, Overson, photograph collection. And shows all the people for, everyone who lived there in eastern Arizona for years probably had their photograph taken by Margaret Overson. So that's a big collection. And then there's lots of others. You have to remember that the universities have special collections. NAU and NASU and U of A all have substantial collections of historical records, including photographs and manuscripts. And my great-grandfather, Henry Martin Tanner, his life story was written by his son, but the documents that he used to collect over the years ended up actually in the University of Utah special collections, but there's a copy in the NAU library And when you go in and ask for it, I went in to look at the documents, and they said, how do you want them? And I said, what do you mean? They said, do you want them all at once, or should we bring them out by box? And I said,
whoa.
They said, we have 2.5 feet of documents from me.
Wow.
Wow.
Oh, no,
wow.
Excuse me, 7 feet. There were 7 feet of documents for him. And I went,
wow.
Okay.
That's amazing. Well, you bring up a good point, because sometimes documents get lost, documents and photographs, which may be, there's an estate sale or something, and the younger generation doesn't understand, these photos mean this and that, and maybe if they don't mean anything to you, they could mean something to a whole other family that you don't know, right? So what do you do with that in that situation? I know we're sitting on thousands, and I mean thousands of photos from Nancy's, trip in Africa and everything, and where we lived, and there's some, other family and friends and everything that's connected with that, and we have to go and do this digitizing thing because they're all slides, and you don't want to lose, the quality over the years, and it's a big deal, and I mean that's the only thing we're storing while we go on the road full time. That's what it's about. It's these photographs. That's what the prize collection, and I think sometimes people don't realize that they can affect other people's lives. If you don't care about them, somebody else is still going to care about them, right? So do you go to a library, or do you go to universities and say, hey, I found all these photos, do something, do you want them?
Yes, absolutely. How the University of Arizona got my collection was that one of the newspaper articles, a newspaper reporter from the Arizona Republic came to the Mesa Family Search Library, which is a family history library, which no longer exists, by the way, and interviewed about a conference we were going to have. And in the course of that, I happened to mention to him that I'd done this collection of photographs, and he thought that was interesting and came back a while later and wrote an article on that. And the people down at the library in the University of Arizona called me directly and said, we'd like your photographs. So, it's a good idea to investigate whether, especially if a person has, like you folks, have traveled extensively and may have a very valuable collection of photographs that a museum or a archive or a university library might really like to have.
And school books, not the school journal yearbooks. Those to me are really cool because that helps you go back even to having the unmarried names, the maiden names of people too, when you look at school.
Right. Well, Ancestry.com, they've made that a big collection that they've shared digital yearbooks. A lot of those are online. You can go.
And MyHeritage.com is now just recently has put on 20 million yearbook article, however you call them, volumes, I guess, on their website of the United States.
Wow. Today
I even found my high school pictures.
I went onto Family Search today, and I opened an account. And then I went, this is one of the most dangerous websites ever. Like, if you start in there, I won't come out. We won't have a magazine. Like, how do you balance your time so that you don't go and get sucked into the vortex of, really, you could go, once you're in there, you could never pull out. Holly, does that happen to you at 2 in the morning?
I haven't pulled out.
Oh,
yet.
She hasn't pulled out.
Yeah.
James, do you get down the rabbit hole?
Oh, no. No, we my wife and I do this 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We don't ever stop.
Wow. Okay, so you guys you never pull out. But it's fascinating. So, and you said you went after the Lost Dutchman and everything. So, to me, doing the family history, even if it's not your own, there's people that you want to start researching because that to me was when we travel and we start hearing about all these people's stories and history. I want to start going, well, I wonder if that person, I wanted to know, is Beale Street in Memphis going to be the same Beale? Because it's interesting, what if they're connected? And you do start to find little connections here and there. We found that with Sanguinetti in Yuma. He was a young kid that set up his own businesses, but he went up into he was in Yuma as a young kid, and then went up to the California Gold Rush, and then came back and opened these businesses. Did ice storage and river stuff, and I mean everything. He was the Italian merchant, and he had wine, and we were like, we know this name Sanguinetti, and when we were up in Yosemite Gold Country in Tuolumne County, here it is. The main road through Sonora, California is Sanguinetti, and I'm like, this is crazy. It's going to be the same guy or same like family, how that kind of thing happens when you follow those routes. So I think I don't know, family history to me, I'm interested in finding out everybody's history. Like that's where I go down the rabbit hole,
That's why we are in the profession we are, is we want to do it.
Yeah, that's true.
Every day, all day long.
Absolutely. Yeah, I hate to disappoint you, but Beale Street in Memphis they don't really know where the name came from. It was just given by a city planner.
Well,
so.
But people, okay, but in Yerington, Nevada,
maybe they had Grandma Beale.
Well, you never know. In Yerington, Nevada, they named their town Yerington to try and attract the Yerington dude who was running the railroads at the time and wanted him to bring the railroads to town to, increase the economy in Yerington. And so sometimes that's why they put those names on there. It's like, here we are.
And then he didn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
So there.
So all of a sudden you could have 20 million Oprah towns or something. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Look under your computer.
Oprahville.
Yeah, look under your computer. Well, this has been such a fascinating conversation. I know there's so much to getting into the history and researching, and it's the great mystery. It's super fun to dig into. Before each of you go, and Holly, I want to touch on some of your upcoming events. I do want to say, okay, you're going to come to Arizona, and if you could step in the time machine, we like the time machine, right? We have to do it, but we're going to go to Arizona time machine, and we're about to take off now. Each of you, if you could get in and get out in Arizona, it could be the future even, the past and the future. Where do you want to get out in Arizona, and who do you want to meet? And tell me the time frame. So it's time to take off. I think we went in reverse. I'm just saying, it happens. Holly, where are you getting out?
As long as I could be safe. I want to get out in 1847 when my great-great-grandfather was crossing that land and really see what it was like during that time.
On the Mormon Battalion?
Yeah, and appreciate his feelings and, the sacrifice he made to do that march.
I like that.
That's the first thought that came to my mind is, wow. But I don't want to do the march with him. I just want to interview him and talk to him about what that was all about. I just don't know that I could have done it. I don't know.
It seems
Maybe
unreasonable. Today because we have vehicles. It seems outlandish, but back then.
See, it's not outlandish to me. I would do it.
And they wore wool. I mean,
I know that's crazy.
I've touched his clothing and his hat and his flag, and I just can't imagine how they did it. Can't imagine. And they had wild bulls come chase them, and they had some scary things. They had some scary things happen, and and I was lucky enough to inherit his personal journal of that whole trip, and so I would encourage you to always, when you're doing these visits and looking for records, to check special collections at universities. It's one of the main places we go every time we go on a research trip. We always go to the universities, museums and the universities, because they have so much good stuff. The special collections really cater to the area.
That's awesome to know. It's really true. I never thought of this until we started doing these shows with you about the universities having it. I always think, I don't know. I just had no clue about these other places. That these colleges have records. I had no idea about that part. James, where are you getting out?
Well, I think I'd get out in St. John's, Arizona in 1920 because all of my family, all of my 4 grandparents, and about that time, 25, would be living there. And they would be able to clear up a lot of the stories that they told that we know are not true.
Oh, wow. There we go. Okay, scandal. See, that's the other part of family history. Scandal comes out. You never know.
That's true.
You see? That's important. I want to go camping. Nancy, you want to go with me?
Sure.
We're going to go camping at Painted Rock, the petroglyph site. You know, I have a thing. I'm like magnetically drawn to this place. The Mormon battalion went through. Jean-Baptiste went through, but not the one from Louisiana. So I'm getting one of it when it's something wrong there, but it's not the same person. So the Butterfield Overland Route went through there, the Anza Trail, and I want to meet Juan Bautista de Anza and John Butterfield there. But I also want to hang out with the Hohokam Indians that were doing all the petroglyphs too.
Cool.
I want all of them there at the same time. So I'm going to have to bebop around in the time machine. I don't know how I'm going to make it happen, but I'd like to meet them all because there's this. I mean, that's what's so fascinating about all these routes, because one person will do it and then everybody starts digging deeper in those routes, those trails, you know, because it's a good way to travel. But that place is just this, I don't know, and it's full of reptiles, you know. There's, you know, chuckwallas and all kinds of cool lizards and wildflowers and, you know, cool. So I want to go there. And James, have you been there to the Painted Rock?
Oh, yes. Beautiful place. Lovely petroglyphs.
Yeah.
I like it.
Isn't it?
It's a great petroglyph site. It's it's very interesting. I think that it, you know, it's kind of lacking in facilities. It needs to be a little bit better protected. But other than that, it's a great place.
I have to say we were just there during the government shutdown.
Yeah.
And it was cleaner than some of the other places we've been during the shutdown. And they now have a park host there that seems to be there.
Oh, okay.
Like all the time.
Yeah,
anytime we can, if I go by it, I have to pull over and go there. I don't know what it is, but I have a thing about this place. And every time we're there, there's someone camping, and all seasons now. So it is primitive. I'm nervous about it because it just feels like it's out there, and anybody can just do whatever they want. I know, like during the shutdown, somebody went and decided to carve their names out at Tumacacri National Historical Park and at the Mission, which is terrible. You know, I don't know why people do that, but that's not the way to document your family history. I'm just saying. But anyway, Nancy, where are you getting out?
Well, I would like to go back to when my father first married and find out who he actually did marry, because apparently he married 2 or 3 people and had several wives all at the same time. And I found one of them, and she was in Arizona, and her last name went from my dad's last name to her second husband, or maybe third, and her last name was Gadsden. And her family turned out to be pretty wealthy and has something to do with the Gadsden Purchase.
I don't know.
And she just was really funny, and she's the one who looked at me and said, you know, did your dad have more than one wife, and are there 2 of your mother? And then my mom's an identical twin with my aunt, and I found out from my grandmother that my dad dated my aunt but married my mother, but he got married in Yuma and also in Mexico, and it's a big mess, and I want to find out all the scandals.
And he has another family that was up in Utah.
I know.
So there we go.
It's crazy. They're all over the place. And apparently each of the women had 6 kids, and he named them all the same as much as he could for, you know, like one would be a boy instead of a girl, so the names are out of order. So I would like to just go find that whole big scandal out and see what really went on.
Holly, Yuma's the hotbed, see?
It's a hotbed. Well, it's where everybody got married.
You know we're going to be calling you on the road. Nancy just found this.
It's the Gretna Green.
But there's so many lies in my family that there's one story that has become, oh well, that's the accepted truth, but it's not. There's no way.
Yeah.
There's no way.
Yeah. See, James, this is it. We want the truth.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
Definitely. And we want the real names. That's the other part of it.
Yeah,
because they kept changing their names.
Yeah.
The last name. So it's
really interesting.
It's a chase. But Holly, you're next. You've got your Ask the Pros. That's a weekly event through Family-History-Expos.com.
Yeah, we do it on Friday mornings.
Okay.
We didn't do one today because we're with you today, but
every third Friday. Yeah,
every third Friday we're with you.
And then April 8th through 13th, I know you'll be back on our third Friday show in March 15th, and kind of giving people some ideas about library research and census, right? And this ties into your April 8th through 13th Family History Library Research Retreat. And that's something that is online and in person, right?
Yes. The premium experience is to come to Salt Lake City and be with us. We teach the classes. They are broadcast. So people who can't come to Salt Lake City can still listen. The classes are going to be amazing. James will be one of our speakers there.
Awesome.
And then we'll spend the rest of the day after class. We'll have 2 hours in the morning, and then the rest of the day we spend in the library, hands-on, helping you do your own personal research. So we could find out some of that mystery you're trying to get, Nancy.
Nancy's
For
mystery,
6 days. For 6 days in the library, and we can really nail down some information for you. But we will do that. And for people who can't physically get to Salt Lake City, they can tune in every morning, 6 days in a row, for 2 hours of class. And the handouts will be a PDF file that they can still get access to the handouts with their registration. So we just want to reach out to everybody we can. And we know that everyone can't get here. If you can, it's the best experience because you learn and then you apply and you work with it. And you don't forget.
Mm-hmm.
It's really,
Holly,
great.
you might want to mention where the physical classes are going to be held. I mean, where we're going to be teaching.
Yeah, we're going to be teaching actually in the Family History Library, the world-renowned library. We have a room there that we'll be teaching in, and we'll be broadcasting live right from the library there in Salt Lake City. So it's very, very cool. You can stay anywhere you want. We do have a hotel that's the closest hotel to the library, but if you have family or another place you'd rather stay, you can stay wherever you want. But each morning we meet at the library. We have our class there, and then we go up. There's 5 floors, so depending on what area of the world you're doing research, you'll go to that floor, and then we help you. We hold your hand. We help you every step of the way.
So no matter what area of the world, so like if I wanted to go and look up our ancestry of the Isle of Man, there's going to be a section for the Isle of Man?
We'd be able to help you with that, yes. This particular series, the classes are focused on the America, the U.S. Census and state census and that. Mm-hmm. But you can research anything that you want while you're there at the library, and we'll help you with that.
Excellent.
Oh, and I'm familiar with. I'm very familiar with the Isle of Man research. By the way, no problem there.
Cool. Oh, good. I want to hear about it because apparently we have witches or people that were burned at the stake for talking to animals and things. So I don't know, man. That's just the family scandal handed down. So we want to find the truth. And apparently they had a castle, and then finally some ancestor or relative of ours contacted us and said it's an apartment building. It's not a castle.
A long time ago, I saw on my mom's side the family's name is Holroyd, and I saw an exhibit in the Museum of the Occult that said they were all witches and warlocks. I'm like, cool.
That's they're not. But you know how Salem witch trials happened. They weren't really crazy. It was the food, and people got put into crazy places.
Oh, you're ruining all the fun.
I know, but we just know that all these wild stories, it's like, okay, let's take a good look at that. But the Isle of Man is fascinating. There's some fascinating stuff there. So
apparently my grandfather was one of 16 kids there.
Oh wow! Apparently we have this on our family on all sides, that we have big families. So very cool. I want to thank everyone for joining us. We've got more coming up on the show. Our Love Your Parks tour story, Family History Story in Chiricahua National Monument. But in the meantime, go to Family-History-Expos.com and learn more about the Family History Library Research Retreat. Again, that's April 8th through 13th. Also, sign up for Holly's newsletter. It's one of the best ways to keep up with what's going on over there, and also to keep up with the upcoming International Family History Expo, Let Your Light Shine, 2019 International Family History Expo coming August 5th through 10th. So you're going to want to keep up with that as well. Thank you so much, James, for joining us, and everyone can follow you. The best thing is Genealogy-Star, right, on your blog?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Okay, keep them connected with you.
Thank you.
And thanks, and also you can also get James. It's James L. Tanner, the book, The Guide to Family Search, online as well. And here's a song for you. We had to do this from Tucson. It's called Bonita. We love to play this. It's a song written by famous Arizona artist Ted DeGrazia, and they found his music manuscripts in the gallery after he had passed, along with a lot of silver and empty boxes of Chivas Regal, and a lot of cash that he really did stash. And anyway, they found the music and recreated the album with the assistance of his son, Domingo DeGrazia. So you can get the album. It's called Please Remember Me at the gallery. You can just go to degrazia.org. But here it is, Bonita. We always like to play DeGrazia's music for you when you're on the show, Holly. It always happens.
I know you do.
All right. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. See you next month.
Thank you.
Yeah. Alrighty. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
In the country of romance, where I lived, loved, and danced, lived a charming señorita, whom they all call Bonita. Señorita, Bonita, please be my señorita. Bonita, my heart is calling you. Your dear eyes look so romantic to me, with love tears that look like pearl-coated drops. Bonita, I love romance and guitar, and Bonita, we'll love beneath the moon. pregnant, my lovely senorita, whom they all call Bonita.